The human transport ship slowly docked with the great silver ring of the Velari space station. From the wide window, Tom could see hundreds of alien ships moving in smooth patterns, their surfaces shining like liquid metal. The station itself was massive, big enough to hold cities inside. Tom had read about the Velari before, but this was his first time meeting them in person. They were known for their sharp minds, graceful bodies, and proud nature. Humans had only met them 5 years ago, and the Velari still thought of humanity as a new and untested species. Tom stepped off the transport with his small bag and walked into the main hall. Velari moved past him in flowing robes or light armor, their tall forms moving with slow, confident steps. Some gave him quick glances, but did not stop. Most did not even look at him. The hall smelled faintly of strange flowers, and the air was warm, almost like spring on Earth. A station official, another Velari, walked up to him. The alien had light blue skin and long silver hair tied in a braid. He looked at a glowing tablet. Before speaking, "You are Tom, the human researcher," the official said. His voice was calm but distant. "Yes," Tom replied. "You will be working with Zyra of House Velner. She is a lead scientist here. She will meet you in the research wing." Tom thanked him and followed the glowing arrows on the floor until he reached the research section of the station. It was quieter here. Machines hummed softly, and strange alien plants grew in glass cases along the walls. He found a large lab filled with bright blue light from the ceiling. Zyra was there. She stood beside a tall console, her back turned to him. Her hair was long and silver like the others, but hers shone brighter, almost like polished metal. Her skin was pale gold, and her long green eyes were sharp and alert. She wore a fitted dark uniform that showed her rank. She turned her head slightly when Tom entered but said nothing. "Hello," Tom said with a polite smile. "I am Tom. I will be working with you." Zyra glanced at him briefly. Her expression was unreadable, and her voice was cool when she replied, "I am aware." Tom waited for her to say more, but she turned back to her work. Her fingers moved over the smooth surface of the console, bringing up streams of alien text. She spoke without looking at him. "The tools you brought are in the storage locker on the right. Keep them there. Do not place anything on my work tables. Follow my instructions when I give them. Do you understand?" "Yes," Tom said. He kept his voice steady. He had worked with difficult people before, but the Velari were something else. They carried themselves like royalty, and Zyra seemed to be the proudest of them all. For the rest of the day, Zyra barely spoke to him. When she did, it was only short commands like "hand me that" or "check the readings." She never asked his opinion, never thanked him. She acted as if he was only a temporary helper who would soon be forgotten. Other Velari scientists walked past the lab during the day, and a few looked inside. Tom noticed that some of them gave him small smirks, as if amused that a human was here. He tried not to let it bother him. He focused on his assigned tasks. He checked the calibration of the scanning equipment, organized the storage lockers, and took readings from the wormhole mapping software. He worked quietly, hoping that showing skill and patience would make Zyra at least respect his presence. By midday, his stomach began to growl. The Velari ate in long dining halls, and Tom joined them. He walked to the food dispenser, which offered a mix of human and Velari meals. As he sat down with a plate of noodles and some kind of purple fruit, he noticed Zyra at the far table. She was surrounded by other Velari scientists. She was laughing at something one of them said. When her eyes briefly met his, she quickly looked away and kept talking to her group. Tom sighed and returned to his food. He had come here with the hope of learning from one of the brightest scientists in the galaxy. Instead, he had met a wall of cold silence. Still, he reminded himself that first impressions could change. Maybe she just needed time. When he went back to the lab in the afternoon, he found Zyra working alone. The others had left for a meeting. She did not greet him, but handed him a data pad without looking up. "These are the readings from our last wormhole survey. Review them for any inconsistencies." Tom nodded and began scanning the data. The Velari symbols were complex, but he had trained for months to understand them. As he worked, he felt her eyes on him for a brief moment, but when he looked up, she was back to her screen. It was a small thing, but he noticed it. The rest of the day passed slowly. By the time the station's lights dimmed to evening mode, Tom had finished all his tasks. Zyra gave a short nod when he told her, "You may go. We begin early tomorrow." Tom left the lab and walked through the station corridors toward the guest quarters. Through the windows, he could see the stars and the slow spin of the Great Ring. Somewhere out there were the unstable wormholes they would be studying. He wondered how long he could work with someone who acted like he was invisible. Still, he decided he would not give up. He had a job to do, and he would do it well, even if Zyra never smiled at him. As he lay in his bunk later that night, the faint hum of the station around him, Tom thought about the day. Zyra had treated him like a shadow, but there had been that brief glance in the lab. Maybe there was a small crack in that wall of pride. If there was, he would find it, and if not, he would still prove himself worthy in his own way. The next morning, Tom woke early and made his way to the research wing. The station was quieter at this hour. Only a few Velari moved through the silver corridors, their robes brushing softly against the smooth floor. When Tom entered the lab, Zyra was already there, standing beside a large holographic map of the surrounding star systems. She looked as if she had been working for hours. Without looking at him, she spoke in her usual cool tone. "We have been assigned to a new mission. You will assist me." Tom placed his bag on the side table. "What kind of mission?" "Wormhole mapping," she replied. "The sector near Orion's reach is unstable. Our readings are incomplete. We will travel there and collect data." She turned and finally met his eyes. "You will follow my lead," Tom simply nodded. "Understood." They spent the next hour preparing equipment. Zyra moved with precision, checking every detail of the scanning devices. Tom packed the portable human tools he had brought, small items that had helped him in other missions. When he placed them in the storage case, Zyra gave them a brief glance. "Human tools are unusual," she said. "They get the job done," Tom replied calmly, her lips curved slightly. Not into a smile, but something close to amusement. "We will see." By midday, they walked together to the docking bay. Their ship, a sleek silver craft with long curved wings, waited on the platform. A few Velari pilots stood nearby, talking in low voices. As Tom and Zyra boarded, he noticed one of the pilots giving him a smirk. He pretended not to notice and followed Zyra to the cockpit. The ship's interior was smooth and uncluttered. The controls were arranged in flowing lines, glowing faintly blue. Zyra took the pilot's seat, and Tom sat beside her at the co-pilot's console. With a soft hum, the ship lifted off the platform and slid into the dark space beyond. For a while, there was only the quiet sound of engines. Tom checked the readings on his screen, matching them to Zyra's main display. She spoke only when necessary, giving short updates. "Adjust sensor range to level 5. Switch to thermal scan. Log these coordinates." Her voice carried no warmth, but there was no open hostility either. She treated him as if he were another part of the equipment. Still, Tom stayed focused. If this was how she wanted to work, then he would work that way. Hours passed as they traveled toward the unstable sector. The stars outside grew brighter. As they approached the edge of a nebula, threads of red and gold gas floated past the ship's windows, glowing like fire in the dark. It was beautiful, and Tom found himself pausing to take it in. Zyra noticed and spoke without looking at him. "You have not seen a Velari nebula before." "No," Tom said. "It's different from the ones near Earth. More alive." She gave a small hum of agreement but returned her eyes to the controls. Even so, Tom felt that this was the first time she had shared a moment with him, even a small one. By the time they reached the wormhole's outer edge, the ship's scanners began to beep softly. The main display showed a swirling black sphere surrounded by rings of blue light. It pulsed as if alive, sending waves of energy into the space around it. Unstable readings. Zyra said, "We will need to move closer." Tom checked his instruments. "Energy spikes are irregular. Could be dangerous." "Of course it is dangerous," Zyra replied. "That is why we are here. They spent the next hour moving around the wormhole, taking readings from different angles. Tom handled the secondary scans, noting strange fluctuations in the energy patterns. Zara remained focused, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. She rarely looked at him, but he caught her watching his hands once when he adjusted the sensors with quick precision. They stopped briefly to eat. Velari rations were stored in small sealed containers. Tom opened one and found a soft, bread-like square with a faint citrus smell. It was not bad. Zara ate in silence, her gaze fixed on the wormhole through the front window. When they finished, Zara set her container aside. We will stay for 2 more cycles. I want complete data before returning. Tom nodded. You really like perfection, don't you? Her green eyes turned toward him. Perfection is the only reason my people have survived. For thousands of years, Tom thought about that as they continued their work. The Velari were indeed careful and precise, but sometimes he wondered if their pride kept them from learning new ways. As the hours passed, the wormhole's energy patterns grew more erratic. The ship shook slightly, and warning lights flashed. Tom quickly checked the readings. Energy surge incoming, stronger than the last one. Zara's eyes narrowed. Hold the course. I want to see the full effect. Tom's fingers tightened on the controls. He knew they could handle a normal surge, but if this one was bigger, it could throw them into a dangerous position. Still, he followed her orders, keeping the ship steady. The surge hit. A wave of blue light rippled across the ship's shields, making the cabin glow. The controls flickered, and for a moment, the ship drifted closer to the wormhole's pull. Tom quickly adjusted the thrusters, regaining balance. Zara said nothing, but he noticed her glance at him with a mix of caution and interest. When the readings finally stabilized, Zara leaned back in her seat. You react quickly. That is useful. It was the closest thing to a compliment she had given him. Tom only replied, "Thank you." They finished the day's scans and set the ship on a safe holding path. Zara entered her notes into the station's research log, while Tom double-checked their recorded data. Outside, the wormhole spun slowly, its blue light reflecting on the ship's walls. When it was time to rest, Zara stood. You may take the forward cabin. I will be in the rear quarters. We resume work at first light. Tom gave a small nod. Understood. As he lay in the narrow bunk, Tom thought about the day. Zara was still distant, still proud, but he had begun to see small cracks in her wall. She had not ignored his work completely. She had noticed his speed, his care, and even shared a brief moment over the beauty of the nebula. It was not friendship yet, but it was a start. The next cycle began with a faint red glow on the ship's control panels. Tom woke early and found Zara already in the cockpit, her eyes fixed on the main display. The swirling wormhole still filled the view ahead, but now its light was different. It was brighter, and the blue rings spun faster than before. Energy activity increased overnight. Zara said without turning her head, "We will collect more data before returning." Tom strapped into his seat. "Are we within safe limits?" "For now," she replied. "But the readings are unpredictable. We must be careful." They began a slow orbit around the wormhole. Tom monitored the energy waves on his scanner while Zara focused on the ship's position. The hum of the engines was steady, but there was a faint vibration in the floor that had not been there yesterday. As they moved closer for a high-detail scan, the ship suddenly jolted. Warning alarms rang through the cockpit. Tom checked his display. Surge detected, stronger than anything we've seen so far. Before Zara could respond, a burst of light erupted from the wormhole's center. It raced outward like a tidal wave, hitting the ship's shields. The entire vessel shook. The lights dimmed, and several control panels went dark. "Main thrusters offline," Zara said quickly. "Stabilizers unresponsive." Tom's mind raced. Without stabilizers, the ship could drift toward the wormhole's pull. "We're getting dragged in," he said. "Shields are weakening." Zara worked the controls, her hands moving with speed, but the alien systems were locked in emergency mode. "Manual override is not responding." Tom grabbed his toolkit. "I'm going to the rear systems panel. Keep the ship angle away from the pull." He ran through the narrow passage to the back of the ship. The system's panel glowed faintly, several warning lights flashing red. Tom opened the cover and saw that one of the main power couplers had overheated. He pulled it out, the metal warm against his fingers, and replaced it with a spare from his kit. Sparks flickered, and the hum of the ship grew louder again, stabilizers coming back online. Zara's voice came from the cockpit. Tom quickly secured the panel and returned to his seat. The ship was still shaking, but now it was slowly moving away from the wormhole's edge. Thrusters operational, Zara said. Adjusting course, Tom let out a short breath of relief. We should move to a safer distance before taking any more scans. Zara gave a small nod. Agreed. They pulled back several thousand kilometers and entered a stable orbit. The alarms quieted, though the wormhole's light still pulsed with unpredictable bursts. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The danger had passed, but the memory of how close they had been was still sharp. Finally, Zara turned to him. Your reaction was fast. Without your repair, we would have crossed the point of no return. Tom gave a small shrug. I've dealt with breakdowns before. Sometimes you just have to act. She studied him for a moment. I underestimated your ability. That was impressive. It was the first time she had openly admitted anything close to respect. Tom simply said, we're a team out here. I need you, and you need me. Her expression softened slightly before she turned back to the controls. Perhaps you are correct. They spent the rest of the day running distance scans. The energy levels remained unstable, but from this range, the ship stayed safe. Zara seemed more willing to speak to Tom now, asking his thoughts on certain readings and even explaining some of the more complex Velari calculations. Tom listened carefully, adding his own observations when needed. During a break, they floated near the observation window at the side of the ship. The nebula stretched across the sky, its colors shifting in slow waves. The wormhole glowed like a dark heart in the center of it all. Velari believe wormholes are like living things, Zara said quietly. They breathe, they grow, and sometimes they become violent. Tom tilted his head. Sounds a bit like humans. She gave him a brief, almost amused glance, perhaps. By the time they finished their work, the wormhole had calmed slightly. The ship's systems were fully functional again, thanks to Tom's repair. Zara set the course for the station, and the ship began its steady journey home. As they traveled, Tom noticed the change in her. She no longer gave him short, clipped orders. Her voice was still formal, but there was less distance in it. She asked him about his time on other stations, about human engineering methods, and about his home planet. Tom answered honestly, keeping the conversation light. When they finally docked at the station, Zara stood and faced him. Today, you proved something important. Skill is not limited to species. I will remember that. Tom smiled. I'm glad you think so. She did not smile back, but her eyes held a different kind of light, one that was no longer cold. As they stepped out onto the station platform, the busy crowd of Velari moved around them. Many of them glanced at Tom, some with curiosity, others with quiet respect. He knew word of their near disaster would spread quickly. Walking through the station's wide corridors, Tom felt a small shift in the air between them. Zara was still proud, still elegant, but she no longer treated him like he was invisible. That, in itself, was a victory. The next morning, the station's great hall buzzed with quiet activity. Streams of Velari moved along the glowing walkways, their long steps smooth and graceful. Tom walked toward the research wing, noticing more eyes on him than before. Some Velari gave him polite nods, while others simply stared with a hint of curiosity. It seemed news of the wormhole incident had already spread. When he entered the lab, Zara was there as usual, standing beside a tall display of rotating star maps. She turned her head when he stepped in, and for the first time, she greeted him without a cold edge. Good morning, Tom, she said. It was only 2 words, but the difference in her voice was clear. Tom nodded. Good morning. She gestured to the display. Our wormhole data is being reviewed by the council. They are impressed. You recorded several energy patterns that even our elder scientists missed. Tom walked closer to the display. That's good to hear. Maybe it'll help predict the next big surge. It will, Zyra replied. She paused for a moment, as if deciding whether to continue. I spoke to the station commander about your repair work. He called it human creativity. Tom allowed himself a small smile. I'll take that as a compliment. Zyra's lips curved slightly, almost into a smile of her own. Perhaps it is. For the rest of the morning, they worked side by side in the lab. Zyra explained more of the Villari research systems, showing Tom functions he had never used before. Her tone was still formal, but there was a patience in her voice now, as if she actually wanted him to learn. In turn, Tom showed her a few human methods for organizing data faster. She seemed curious, watching closely as he rearranged the scanning logs into a more efficient sequence. By midday, they took a break in the station's garden dome. The dome was a wide, bright space filled with trees, plants, and flowing water streams. Villari children ran along the soft grass, while older citizens read or spoke in quiet groups. Tom sat on a stone bench with a cup of warm herbal tea, watching Zyra study a cluster of glowing flowers. These grow only on my homeworld, she said. Their petals change color with the seasons. Tom leaned forward slightly. Looks like they're alive in more ways than one. She gave him a side glance. You compare many things to life itself. Maybe because I've seen enough to know how fragile it is. Tom replied. For a moment, there was silence between them. Then Zyra spoke again, her voice softer than before. When I first met you, I believed humans were impatient and careless. Yesterday, I began to see that I was wrong. Tom looked at her carefully. People often judge before they understand. I've done it too. She nodded slowly, then stood. Come, there's more work to do. Back in the lab. The rest of the afternoon passed smoothly. They reviewed more wormhole data, planned future missions, and even exchanged a few light comments. Once, when Tom made a small joke about the station's food dispensers producing the same flavor for every meal, Zyra let out a short laugh. It was quick, almost like she had caught herself, but it was real. Later in the day, two Villari scientists entered the lab. They exchanged greetings with Zyra and then turned their eyes to Tom. One of them spoke in the Villari language, but Tom understood enough to catch the meaning. They were asking Zyra why she was working so closely with a human. Zyra's answer was calm and clear. Because he is skilled, and because I choose to. The two Villari looked surprised, but they did not argue. They left quietly, leaving Tom standing in silence. That was unexpected, he said after they were gone. Zyra turned back to her console. Respect must be given where it is earned. That evening, as the lab lights dimmed, Zyra walked with him toward the main corridor. There will be a science contest in 3 cycles, she said. Teams from across the sector will compete to present the most valuable invention or discovery. Tom raised an eyebrow. And you're telling me this because I have decided we will enter. Zyra replied, we will combine our skills. Villari precision and human creativity. Tom grinned. I thought you didn't believe in human creativity. I do now, Zyra said simply. But we will need something powerful to win. The idea of working with her on a contest surprised Tom. But he could already see the change in her attitude. She was not just tolerating him anymore. She was inviting him to stand beside her. As they reached the junction where their paths split, Zyra stopped. We will begin planning tomorrow. Bring your best ideas. I will, Tom replied. She gave him a final nod before walking away, her silver hair catching the light. Tom stood for a moment, watching her disappear into the crowd. The woman who had ignored him completely on the first day was now planning to enter a competition with him. It was not just progress. It was the start of something far bigger. That night, as Tom lay in his bunk, the faint hum of the station surrounding him, he thought about the coming challenge. It would not be easy. The Villari were known for their advanced technology and sharp minds, but he also knew that together, they might create something no one had seen before, and if they did, it would not just change the way the Villari saw him. It could change the way they saw all of humanity. 3 cycles later, the station's central hall was alive with sound and color. Bright banners hung from the high ceiling, displaying the crests of different Velari houses and research groups. Stalls lined the sides of the hall, each one showing devices, models, or strange glowing samples. The annual science contest had begun, and every team wanted to prove they were the most skilled in the sector. Tom stood beside Zyra at their assigned station. On the table before them sat their creation, a small, sleek machine with a polished silver surface and blue light running along its edges. It was their wormhole instability detector, built from both Velari and human technology. The device could read the faint signals of an unstable wormhole from light years away, giving ships time to change course before danger struck. Zyra adjusted one of the side panels. "Everything is ready," she said. "Our demonstration will begin in 2 cycles." Tom nodded. "We've tested it enough. It should work perfectly." As they made final checks, a group of Velari approached. Leading them was a tall man with bright gold eyes and an ornate uniform. Tom recognized him from the research wing, Varek, one of Zyra's longtime rivals. He stopped in front of their table, his gaze sweeping over the device before settling on Tom. "So this is the human assistant you spoke of," Varek said, his voice carrying a tone of mockery. "I expected less." Tom stayed silent, but Zyra's eyes narrowed. "He is not an assistant. He is my partner in this project." Varek raised an eyebrow. "Partner? That is unusual. Most humans here are still in training." "Then perhaps you have not met the right ones," Zyra replied, her tone sharp. Varek smiled slightly. "We will see if your human partner can keep up when the judges arrive." He turned and walked away, his team following. Tom glanced at Zyra. "Friendly guy." She shook her head. "Do not waste thought on him. He is skilled, but he believes skill belongs only to the Velari." Tom smirked. "Then I guess it's our job to prove him wrong." As the first presentations began, teams brought forward devices that glowed, hummed, or projected complex holograms. Some demonstrated advanced weapons, others showed medical tools or energy systems. The crowd moved from station to station, pausing to watch each demonstration before moving on. Finally, it was their turn. The hall grew quieter as the judges approached. There were 3 of them, 2 Velari elders and 1 alien from another allied race. Their long robes brushed the floor as they stopped at Zyra's table. Zyra began the presentation with her usual grace. "Honored judges, this device is the result of joint Velari and human work. It can detect unstable wormholes from a distance of several light years, far beyond the range of our current systems." She gestured for Tom to activate the device. He pressed the control pad, and the machine came to life with a soft hum. A holographic display appeared above it, showing a map of nearby space. A faint red mark glowed on the map. "This is a simulated wormhole," Tom explained. "The device is reading the energy patterns even though the source is hidden within this nebula. The signal can be detected before the wormhole becomes dangerous." One of the judges leaned closer. "Studying the readings, your range is impressive. How did you achieve such sensitivity?" Zyra answered. "By combining Velari energy filters with human adaptive algorithms. The filters remove excess noise, while the algorithms adjust for shifting energy patterns in real time." The second judge nodded slowly. "You build this together?" "Yes," Zyra said firmly. Every part of this project was shared. The judges exchanged glances, then stepped aside to make their notes. The crowd began to murmur, some impressed, others clearly surprised that a human had played such a large role in the work. As the judges moved to the next table, Varek stepped forward again. "Not bad," he said with a faint smile, "but we will see how it ranks." Zyra's eyes met his. "It will rank higher than yours." Tom almost laughed at the sharp confidence in her voice. It was the first time she had openly defended their work in public. For a moment, Varek's smile faded, and he walked away without another word. When all the presentations were finished, the judges returned to the stage. The lead judge raised a small silver disc, the symbol of the contest's highest honor. This year's winner has demonstrated not only innovation, but also cooperation between species. The device will improve safety for travelers across the sector. The crowd leaned forward. The judge's voice was clear. First place is awarded to Zyra of House Velner and Tom of Earth. A wave of applause filled the hall. Tom felt the sound rush over him as Zyra turned toward him with a look that was almost proud. They stepped onto the stage together, receiving the silver disc from the judge. As the applause continued, Zyra spoke quietly so only he could hear. Today, you have shown them what humans can do. Tom smiled. We showed them. They left the stage, moving through the crowd as others offered congratulations. Even some who had ignored Tom earlier now greeted him with respectful nods. When they reached the quieter quarter outside the hall, Zyra stopped. You handled yourself well today. You did not let their words distract you. Tom shrugged lightly. I've heard worse. The best answer is always the work. Yes, she said, and this time. Her smile was faint but real. And today, our work was the best. As they walked back toward the research wing, Tom knew something important had shifted. Zyra no longer saw him as just a human scientist from a young species. She saw him as an equal, and maybe even as someone she could trust. The contest had given them victory, but it had also given them something far more valuable. A partnership that could stand against anyone, even the proudest Velari rivals. The grand hall of the Velari station was filled with soft glowing lights. In the hum of alien instruments, dozens of teams stood behind tables, each displaying their inventions. Tall banners of deep blue silk swayed gently from the ceiling, showing the symbols of the Velari Science Guild. The air was filled with voices, laughter, and the faint scent of metallic flowers used for decoration. Tom stood next to Zyra, feeling the weight of many curious eyes on him. He was the only human in the contest. Most Velari gave him polite nods, but some still wore the same doubtful expressions he had seen since arriving on the station. Zyra, however, stood with calm pride. Her silver hair caught the light as she adjusted the display of their invention. The device they had built together was a sleek metal cylinder with smooth lines and a soft blue glow at its center. It was no bigger than a backpack, but inside was a complex mix of human problem-solving and Velari precision. It could scan wormholes from incredible distances and predict instability. Before it became dangerous, judges moved from one table to the next. They wore dark robes with gold patterns along the edges. Each judge carried a small slate for taking notes. When they reached Zyra and Tom, one of them raised a brow. This is your entry? The judge asked in a low, calm voice. Zyra bowed her head with respect. Yes. A combined design from Velari and human technology. I handled the core systems. My partner Tom developed the adaptive interface. The judge's eyes moved to Tom. A human contribution? There was no insult in his tone, but Tom could sense doubt. Yes, Tom said. It allows the device to adjust in real time to sudden changes in wormhole activity. We tested it after our incident near the unstable wormhole. Without the adaptive code, the readings would have been too slow to react. The judge leaned closer to study the device. Another judge took out a scanning tool, passing it over the invention. The blue glow pulsed gently, reacting to the scan. Show us a demonstration, the first judge said. Zyra stepped aside so Tom could work. He connected the device to a display screen. A three-dimensional image of a wormhole appeared, spinning. Slowly, Tom adjusted the controls, and the image flickered as the device simulated sudden instability. Instantly, warning lights appeared on the screen. The judges watched with interest as Tom explained how the interface predicted the danger and suggested safe navigation routes. One judge nodded slowly. Efficient, fast, clear, impressive. The other made a note on the slate. Unexpected use of human improvisation in a Velari design. This could save lives in deep space travel. When they moved on to the next table, Zyra gave Tom a small smile. That went well, she said softly. You handled their questions with skill. Tom gave a small shrug. It's easy when you believe in the work you're showing. Hours passed as the judges examined all entries. Some inventions looked advanced, others strange, and a few were simply artistic. Finally, the head judge stepped to the front of the hall and raised a silver rod that rang like a bell when tapped on the floor. All entries have been reviewed. the judge announced. We will now present the winners of this year's science contest. Tom could feel his heart beating faster. Zyra stood tall beside him, her eyes focused on the judges. In third place, the judge continued, Team Verith, for their long-range mineral scanner. The crowd applauded politely. In second place, Team Renner, for their atmospheric converter for barren moons. Another round of applause. The judge paused, letting the silence grow before speaking again. And in first place, Team Zyra and Tom, for their wormhole instability detector. A wave of sound filled the hall as applause and cheers echoed around them. Tom felt a rush of pride and relief. Zyra turned to him, her green eyes brighter than he had ever seen them. Without thinking, she reached out and squeezed his arm lightly. They stepped forward to receive the award, a crystal sphere resting on a silver stand. The head judge handed it to Zyra, who then turned and offered it to Tom. You should hold it, she said. Tom took it, feeling the cool, smooth surface. We build it together, he said. Zyra nodded. Yes, but you proved something important here today. The rest of the evening passed in celebration. Other scientists approached to ask questions about their invention. Some Villari who had once ignored Tom now spoke to him with interest and respect. Even a few of the rival team members offered quiet congratulations. When the crowd began to thin, Zyra and Tom found a quiet corner near one of the wide station windows. Outside, the stars stretched across the darkness like scattered jewels. I want to tell you something, Zyra said, her voice lower now. When you first arrived, I thought you were just another human trying to prove yourself. I saw no reason to pay you much attention. Tom smiled faintly. I noticed. She gave a small laugh. But I was wrong. You think differently. You adapt. You act when others hesitate. That is not weakness. It is strength. Tom looked out at the stars. We all have something to offer, Zyra. Sometimes it just takes a little time for people to see it. Zyra stood beside him in silence for a moment. Then she said, Perhaps we should start planning our next project, something even greater. Tom nodded. I'm ready when you are. The lights of the station reflected softly in the window. As they stood there, no longer just colleagues, but partners who had earned each other's respect. The contest was over, but Tom knew this was only the beginning of what they could accomplish together. The command center of the Aurora was filled with soft lights, glowing panels, and the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Rian stood near the wide viewing window, staring at the stars stretching across the darkness. It had been a long journey. From the first strange meeting with Alira, the proud alien who had refused to even acknowledge him, to the battles they had fought side by side, everything had changed. But now, the final moment had come. Alira entered the room silently. She was no longer wearing her ceremonial armor or the cold expression she used to keep. Instead, she looked almost warm. Her violet eyes softened when they met his. Rian felt a strange tension in the air, as if something important was about to happen. You fought well today, human, she said, her voice quieter than usual. Rian smiled faintly. We fought well, together. She walked closer, her movements graceful but hesitant. It was strange to see her unsure. The Alira he had first met would never show hesitation. She had been too proud, too certain of her own superiority. Now, she stopped just a few steps away from him. I was wrong about you, she said. From the beginning, I thought you were just ordinary, fragile, not worth my time. Rian chuckled. You made that pretty clear. Her lips curved into a small smile. Yes, I ignored you. I thought I was above you. But every time I saw you stand up, even when you were outmatched, every time you chose to protect others instead of yourself, it made me watch more closely. Rian tilted his head. So now you're saying you were watching me all along. Her smile grew wider. Yes, and now, I will say something I never thought I would say to a human. She stepped closer, until she stood right in front of him. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held a strange mix of pride and sincerity. I am your biggest fan, human. Rian blinked, almost laughing at how unexpected the words were. That's not what I thought you were going to say. It is the truth, she said. You have shown me what true courage looks like. Not the kind written in ancient songs, but the kind lived every day. You risked everything for people who were not even from your own world. You stood in front of danger when no one would have blamed you for running. Rion felt a warmth in his chest. Coming from Alira, those words meant more than any medal or award. And now, he asked, what happens after this? She glanced out at the stars for a moment. My people need to hear the truth about humans. I will tell them, not as an ambassador forced to speak kind words, but as someone who has seen your worth with my own eyes. Rion nodded slowly. And you? Her eyes met his again. I will see you again. That is a promise. The ship's intercom crackled. To life, the captain's voice announced that they were preparing to enter jump space, returning to Earth's sector. Rian knew this meant his mission with the Alien Alliance was over for now. As the hum of the engines grew louder, Alira stepped back, but not far. Do not forget me, human. He grinned. You're not the kind of person anyone could forget. She gave a short, almost shy laugh, and then turned to leave. Just before the door closed behind her, she looked over her shoulder. Remember, I'm your biggest fan. The door slid shut, leaving Rian standing there with a strange mix of pride, amusement, and something deeper. The stars outside streaked into long lines as the Aurora jumped into faster-than-light travel. Rian didn't know what challenges would come next, but he knew one thing for certain: somewhere out there, in the endless sea of stars, an alien who once looked down on him was now cheering for him more than anyone else, and that, he thought with a quiet smile, was the most unexpected victory of all. The mission was over, but the story of Rian and Alira was far from finished.